My name is Paul Wolliver. I'm the owner of Pinellas Power Products. This is the installation instruction video for generators using the Ducar 150cc engine. For the purpose of this video, I'll be using the Westinghouse WH3700iXLTc generator. This kit will fit other generators, so if you're seeing this video and it's linking to another generator, don't be too upset about it. A couple of things I want to cover before we get into this is this generator is a series of compromises. It's only a 150cc engine, yet it's a 3700 watt peak output generator. So it is loud. It is probably the loudest inverter series generator I've done a kit for yet. It's nowhere near as loud as a single phase, but it's very loud for an inverter series. Basically, they wanted to make the generator as small, lightweight, and powerful as they could. They achieved that. They had to give up things like noise, electric start, and a few of the other features. At any rate, we'll go ahead and get started. That's just the oil fill door. This side panel, the beauty cover comes off with just 4 screws. If your screws on yours are cross-threaded, which unfortunately I do see a lot of that, I'll show you how to get those out when I pull the end covers off of this. There is a trick that will allow you to pull the screws out even if they're cross-threaded and turning freely on you at this step. The 4 screws that hold the beauty cover on have a shoulder on them. And those are the only screws with shoulders on them. The end cover is held on with 6 screws, and these 6 screws do not have shoulders, as I stated earlier. These are the end cover screws. If the screws for the beauty panel are cross-threaded or something, what you'll have to do is take a pair of locking pliers, like vice grips, and reach in, and you can probably see clearly on this one. I don't know if you need a flashlight to see or not, but you would grab the plastic lug and everything and squeeze the plastic lug to where it grips the nut that's held captive in there. And you have to squeeze it pretty tight with a pair of locking pliers to be able to undo the screw, and that's only if yours is cross-threaded. The next step will be to pull the front cover off. And the front cover is only held on with 4 screws. You notice the top two screws are shorter than the bottom two screws on the front cover. Then pull the spark plug cover off. And then take the air lid or air box lid and the air filter out of the way. Now you'll take the valve cover off. The two bottom bolts in the valve cover are a little bit tricky. You'll have to get those with an end wrench and then just spin them loose with your fingers. Yeah, the bottom two bolts on the valve cover are definitely the most difficult ones. Incidentally, all 4 bolts on the valve cover are identical. There's a breather hose that goes onto a fitting on the front of the valve cover. You'll slide that off and then lift the valve cover and it comes out through the spark plug hole. Okay. In the kit, you're going to have a fuel pump, a tube of gasket sealant, and that is for the valve cover itself, or the valve cover gasket itself. If the valve cover gasket gets torn or anything, I do not have a source for valve cover gaskets for these yet. If I do come up with a reliable source for valve cover gaskets, the kits will no longer have a gasket sealant in it, but it'll have a new valve cover instead. Next item will be a fuel filter, an assembled PCV valve, a bag full of small parts, clamps, fittings, fuel hoses, and so forth, and a flash drive with a copy of this video on it. You'll also have small zip ties, a roll of Teflon tape, a hose with a prime bulb in it, a section of 1/4-inch Gates barricade hose, and an instruction decal. So the first step to installing this is going to be to disable the stock PCV valve, and we'll be putting another PCV valve in another location later on in the video. Okay, to disable the PCV valve, take one of the zip ties and just loop it around. and take a small screwdriver or something and push up on the reed of the PCV valve. Then you'll take the zip tie, and what you're doing is you're zip tying the reed valve against the stop so that it holds it open. Like so. Now the reed valve is all the way open. Now we can put the reed valve back into the valve cover. If your valve cover gasket is torn, you'll want to use gasket sealant from the tube of gasket sealer to repair it. This one came off nice and clean, but this is a new generator. You'll slide the valve cover back on. And put the 4 bolts back in place. Then there's a breather hose that used to go on the valve cover, and you can see the end of the breather hose right here. The other end of the breather hose goes onto an elbow fitting right here on the intake runner. I don't know if you can see up in there or not. See this elbow fitting that I'm touching with my finger? When I slide it out, you'll be able to see it better, but you pull it straight this direction. And that's the breather hose. Undo the elbow fitting from the hose. You won't be using that hose again, but you will be using this elbow fitting. This is the replacement PCV valve. You're going to slide the clear hose back onto the valve cover where the bent hose that you removed was beforehand. Incidentally, these hoses right here are breather lines. This one goes to the fuel tank, this one goes to the air box, and it goes into the evaporative emissions canister. Normally they're down like this. I take this one and push it up. It just makes it a lot easier to get the PCV line back on. So I'm going to take it and push right up here, and it's going to slide onto the fitting on the valve cover. Okay, you can see where it's slid onto the fitting on the valve cover. Then we're going to take one of the hose clamps included in the kit. And put it around that clear plastic hose. Incidentally, because this is such a small engine, it does not produce a particularly strong pulse wave to drive the fuel pump. So we cannot allow any air leaks in the pulse line on this particular generator, or it won't get enough fuel. Okay. Now we're going to take the elbow fitting that we pulled out earlier and slide it down over the end of the PCV valve, and it's a fairly snug fit. Then we're going to take this and push it right back into the hole that this came out of. Easier said than done. So I'm going to feel my way in there. See if that's in there right. Yes, it is. Okay. So you can see now that this hose runs down and in a gentle loop, and then comes back up and plugs into the same exact place where that elbow fitting used to plug into. The elbow fitting now plugs into the same hole and points down, where it used to plug into the hole and point up. Pointed up and this went onto it. Now it simply points down and this hose goes onto it. But it starts at the valve cover and ends up there. And now for the pulse port, we have this T-fitting. And that's where we're going to take our pulse line that drives the fuel pump. So from the section of hose, we're going to take a 7 3/4 inch piece of hose, cut from the section of 1/4 inch hose that comes in the kit. That goes onto the T-fitting. What we're going to do is just make sure that we've got enough room the clamp. Because the way this is set up, I'm going to face the clasp of the clamp toward the generator housing. And I'm going to tighten it down. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the fuel selector valve, which has the choke mechanism on it, and I'm going to turn it all the way to the fully choked position. What I'm doing is checking to make sure that the PCV line that we've got in here is not restricting the choke movement at all. Okay. So this hose is just going to point down here for now. The next step, we open this up. If you can see in here, there's a fuel filter. Can you see the fuel filter I'm touching with my middle finger? Okay. I don't know if it's easier to see shining the light in here. Yeah. And that is the fuel filter. We're going to remove that fuel filter, and it's held in place by Corbin clamps. And I can show you how to undo the Corbin clamps once we get one out of here, where you can actually get at it and see what I'm doing. You'll notice I just shut the fuel to the off position. We're going to drip a little bit of fuel because we're taking the fuel filter out, but we don't want it to just pour. You'll be glad to know that we are going to relocate the fuel filter to a much more easily serviceable location. I think that was just a little bit short-sighted on Westinghouse's part to mount the fuel filter in such a difficult location to get at, considering that it is a serviceable item. Okay. I'm going to cut a 10.5-inch piece of hose from our section of hose included in the kit. Then in the bag of small parts, one of the parts is a 90-degree 1/4-inch fitting. Okay. And this is going to get on this side one of the white plastic hose clamps that are included in my kit. This side of the 90-degree fitting is going to go where this side of the fuel filter used to go. There's a short hose now that goes from the carburetor. It used to go from the carburetor to the fuel filter, and then from the other end of the fuel filter to the fuel selector valve. So the side that goes to the carburetor, we're going to plug this in, and then we're going to take the Corbin clamp and slide it back on. Let me take one of these Corbin clamps out of here to show you how they work. This is a Corbin clamp. To release it, you merely squeeze in on the two ears, slide it over the hose, and then release it. This is Gates barricade hose, so it's just slightly bigger than what's in there, but you'd slide it over the hose and release it like that, and it will clamp the hose down. And that's how Corbin clamps work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and slide it into the end of the hose that goes to the carburetor. Okay, you may be able to see this. I'll put my finger on it. Right here, you can see that the Corbin clamp is on the original hose, and my white nylon clamp is on the hose that comes with my kit. Okay? Then I'm going to take a 21.5 inch section of the hose. And a T-fitting that's included in the kit. On the stem of the T goes this 21.5 inch hose. And then I'm going to put one of the nylon clamps on this. So the clasp of the clamp, as you're looking at it with the hose coming down, will be to the left. This fitting on the T-fitting will go into the original factory hose that goes to the fuel selector valve, and then I'll slide the Corbin clamp onto it. Again, these things are like working on a mercury outboard. Everything is black, so it's not easy. Slide that just a little bit further in. Okay, so now you can see that the hose that's pointing down has got my nylon clamp on it. The hose that goes to the fuel selector valve has the factory Corbin clamp on it. Then we're going to take a 13-inch section of hose. And that's going to go on to this T-fitting, the third barb, the one we left, and it's pointing toward us. Incidentally, if you're having trouble getting the hoses onto the fittings, just a drop of motor oil makes it a whole lot easier. And now we're going to put another nylon connector. And now you see how that's fitted. Okay, this hose is going to be incoming fuel into the generator. We'll take our fuel pump. You'll notice the fuel pump will have small arrows. The one pointing in is fuel into the fuel pump. One pointing out is fuel out of the fuel pump, and of course that's the one that goes to the carburetor. The third line with the letter P on it is the pulse line, and that goes on the pulse fitting. I'm putting just a little bit of oil onto each of these connectors because it does make life easier. So that's the pulse line, and we've got a clamp up here. Then this is the fitting that went onto the end of the T. This is the most recent one we put on, and it will go on the input side of the fuel pump, one with the arrow pointing inward. Ultimately, the fuel pump is going to be positioned right down here. We want to make sure that nothing is kinked. This is the fuel input hose. It's the one that was 21 and a half inches, and it pointed straight down from the T-fitting. So we're routing it across the top of the air box and up. And just for the time being, I'm going to push it up to where it comes up through the hole that you go to service the spark plug from. And that's just to keep it out of our way for now. Then this hose is the one that goes into the carburetor. So this is where our fuel filter is going to go. If you're thinking about it, when you put it in, twist the filter so that the part that you see, as opposed to the shameless advertising plug for myself, you can see the clear side, and that way you can tell if the fuel filter is clogged up. And this gets a nylon clamp as well. Then you cut a 3 3/8 section of hose. Put another hose clamp on it. Now comes the tricky part. I'm going to use this hose end simply as a lead, pull the filter down, and now as you can see, the clear window is visible below the air box. A little bit more oil on that. Okay. Put a hose clamp right here. Hose clamp on this fitting. And then one on this. Now this clamp here, instead of facing out where it's nice and easy to clamp it on, I've got to spin it around backward because there's so limited space in there that I want it over the fuel pump. Like I said earlier, this generator is a series of compromises, and one of the things that they wanted was that the generator was nice and small, so it was portable and get as much power as possible. So it's going to be rather cramped up in here. Okay, so now we have our fuel pump in place. All the hoses routed in such a way that none of them are kinked. So now we just need to put the cabinet back together. Remember, these screws don't have to go super, super tight. Okay, and I'm going to take over here. Just make sure when I put the cabinet back together that I didn't pinch any of these hoses, and that they're all nice and smooth. Any of the bends are a nice radius bend on it. Okay, good. I take one of the zip ties and put it around all four of these hoses, the factory hose and the three of mine. It doesn't have to be super tight. I just want to hold the hoses up so that the air box is more easily serviceable for the next person that works on this generator. Now we can go ahead and put the lid back on the air box. And if you thought it was tight fitting before, now it's even tighter. Okay, now the last part is the fuel inlet. And what we're going to do is this will, the hose bar will screw on to the quick disconnect fitting, and it will pinch between here and here the plastic casing. So what we're going to do is, if you look back here on this area, you'll see that above the muffler, in other words on the side of the generator opposite the recoil start toward the back, there's plenty of room back in there. On the side with the recoil start, there's a muffler, or excuse me, there's a fuel tank, and we definitely don't want to risk drilling a hole in the fuel tank. So we're going to mount the fuel fitting above the muffler, and it has plenty of room up there. The hose barb will be on the inside like this, and the quick disconnect fitting will be on the outside. Okay, I don't want it to be too close to the access hole for the spark plug, or the service door for the spark plug. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit so that there's plenty of webbing to have strength. if you're using a step drill like this, just be careful, don't get going too fast because you don't want to drill the hole oversize. Okay. I'm going to take it the rest of the way with a repairman's reamer because I wanted a nice tight fit. And tight it is. On the back side, there's some foam, and just tear out the foam. Okay. Then included in the kit is a roll of Teflon tape. When you wrap the Teflon tape, wrap it the direction that the threads go, and don't overlap the end. As in you come up like this, but if you overlap the end like this, that piece of tape will get sheared off by the threads as you're putting it on, and that will get in the fuel line. Now, truth be known, it will get stopped in the fuel filter ultimately. However, we don't want it to cause any problems or clog up the filter prematurely. So it's just nice if we don't make such an easily avoided mistake. Oops. The fuel quick disconnect fitting, we do not want the barbs pointing backward because we don't want the hose running toward the exhaust. So ultimately, when this is snugged down, we want the barbs facing toward the front of the generator, not toward the rear of the generator. So now we're going to take this hose, we're going to push it down inside the cowling again. I'm just checking it for length. And I'm going to snip off just a little bit of extra hose in here. A little bit of oil on that hose barb. Can you see what I'm doing from where you're at? Okay. Okay. We take another one of the nylon hose clamps and put it on the quick disconnect fitting right up here. Incidentally, the kit comes with 2 of these quick disconnect fittings. This one would go on the fuel tank end, or excuse me, goes on the fuel tank. And now we're ready to start putting the cabinet back on. Pay particular attention when you put these screws in. You don't want to cross thread them. If any of them were cross threaded when you took it apart, you know what a pain that can be to deal with that later on. So you want to be very careful not to cross thread anything that you put together. This is the breather hose that we took off earlier. The beauty cover is held on with several snaps. Then each of the corners has a screw holding it on. And this is simply a beauty cover. It doesn't have any structural function at all. Then over the spark plug, put the spark plug door back in. Then the oil service door. And then we have a decal with the operating instructions on it. I will be going over the operating instructions in the product demo video. I don't do that on this one. This one is how to install it. The product demo video is how to operate it once you've installed it. I will point this out, step 7 is not a misprint. When you're running off of the remote tank, the fuel selector valve will be in the off position. When you're running off the stock tank, the fuel selector valve will be in the on position. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take it outside and fire it up and test it. Make sure everything works well. If you have any questions or comments, right below this video, if you're looking on YouTube, below the video in the description section is a link to my website. Please contact me through the website. Please do not attempt to contact me through YouTube. I do not monitor YouTube or any of the chat rooms or anything else. If you contact me by the shop phone or email, you'll get a very quick response. But I just don't have time to monitor any of the other different methods that there are out there. And I thank you for your time.